Hey, folks, happy Saturday, and welcome to another episode of Plan A Conversation. So, listen, if you are tuning in to our conversation in the visual form, you are seeing someone that you have known before, especially on Planning Conversations, the Crystal I. Berger. But before we get into that introduction, I just wanted to say thank you for your emails and your DMs telling us what you have liked about the season, some things you want improved, and what you're looking for in 2022. And so I could not think of anybody better to usher us into where we have been in 2021 and where we're headed in 2022 than Crystal. We have been friends, and you all, as you know, we've gone through a lot of really fun and interesting times together. We've built brands. We're building some interesting tech, and I'll allow her to share her own introduction. But it's nice to be on this journey with people who really appreciate you for who you are at your core, and you can bounce stuff off of each other. You can be honest with each other. That feedback is real, and support each other along the way. And this is what I found in the sister that you are seeing on your screen. And for our audio folks, the voice you're about to hear is none other than Crystal I. Berger. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you, Klay, for that illustrious introduction. I love you and the work that you do. I hear you more oftentimes than not saying there's only one plan A. Now, of course,
Yeah,
there are multiple ways that we get to plan A, but we have
that's right.
to stay focused on the plan A. So I'm excited. Listen, this is our annual catch up, for the people, the public catch up, because we do our daily catch ups anyway. So I'm excited. Yes.
No, and it's really interesting because a listener from Houston and Florida sent me an email earlier this year and said, "Are you going to have Crystal back on the podcast?" And I got an email from someone who listens in the Bronx, and she's an educator, and she rides down the Bronx River, and she literally asked me, "Was I going to have you on
Wow.
again this year?" And so I just want you to know that you are filling the cups of so many different people. And so, Crystal, for our listeners who are new to it and not, and true to the podcast, but be new to your voice, tell us what it is that you do in the world and what's your inspiration for it.
Whoa, what do I do in the world? So, I tell everybody that I am a journalist turned innovator. I worked in network news for 10 years as a senior booking producer and also as a national features host. And that time was very interesting for me, Klay. I was there in that newsroom, a massive, major engine as the only African American woman in my newsroom for that entire decade. And what I realized being in that space was, though there are many people in those spaces that are competent and qualified, there's only one there's only one you. And that brings a certain energy to the room. And also it brings a certain unique skill set that no one can take from you. And with that, I brought about 85% of the diversity to our newsroom, tripled our network bookings in that respect as well. And so what I realized in that process of being the only one in the room, right? How those inefficiencies and that friction led to a lack of equity, in these spaces. And so I decided to take that knowledge and empower not just myself, but our communities and our universe overall to say, what happens when I'm no longer in this room? How do we bring the diversity into the room? How do we impact efficiency through emerging technologies and things like that? So with that, that's how I became an innovator. I decided to create a process to automate some newsroom operations that would not only make us more efficient, but make those spaces more equitable as well.
Wow. And so what are you seeing across the board just in terms of results of you creating this new technology and
Mm.
innovation?
It is a consistent theme that I knew myself from living the experience, but getting it validated by amazing people who have resumes like you, right? Extremely overqualified, have the perspective, have the expertise, but they don't have that person in the room to bring them in the room. And it's a consistent pain point where these qualified voices, not only diverse voices, but just voices that need to be heard, right? That hey, we need access to these spaces, And so it's not a thing of we're not qualified or competent to be in these spaces, but we just don't know who to call, right? And so it kind of defaults to when you look around these spaces and see that there are only white men over 45 in not just leadership positions, but managerial and some lower level positions. So they're defaulting to their Rolodexes. And like I know, if you didn't go to a Princeton or Ivy League school, your Rolodex doesn't look like the decision makers at most corporations, most tech companies, right? That's your Harvards, your Stanfords, your Yales. And so that's why we're seeing this inefficiency and inequity in these spaces, is because there's no one to just default to their Rolodex and bring them in. So all that to say, the consistent theme is I'm meeting so many amazingly dynamic, talented experts across the board who just don't have access. And being that catalyst for that change has been really, really important to me. And I'm actually excited to do that kind of work, because what I know is that it just makes our society better, right? Being able to bring an opposing viewpoint or a unique perspective to a conversation is critical. And so if we don't continue to mobilize diverse people in spaces, then we'll continue to see the divisiveness that we've seen in our country for quite some time, for centuries actually, that people just didn't talk
Yeah.
about.
And Crystal, your technology and innovation literally is bringing a shift to culture, a shift in the way in which we receive information and who we receive information from, and
Mhm.
actually connects us all together like never before.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's exciting because like I am probably the most non-technical founder on the planet, right? So, I am getting an MBA in product management, executive leadership, all of these things on the ground. And I can say it's been the best learning experience for me because you can study this stuff in books all day. You can even look at numbers when you talk about
Reach.
DEI and all that. But until you actually do the work, and you and I talk about this more oftentimes than not, people who may be in spaces that have a presence, but they haven't done the work. And therefore, the people that follow them or that engage with them, they still are missing a core component of what it is that they need to thrive, right? To actually get to their plan A, is because the people haven't actually done the work. And so, doing this work for me has just revealed so much about my character, right? In so many ways. And I tell people, if you're not serious about having real impact, then don't do it, because it's going to take real work. The work doesn't have to be
That's right.
hard, right? It's good work, right? It's refining work, but it's real work. And, that's the thing that keeps you going, is truly that purpose that we always talk about, the impact that we want to have in the world. And so I just think that this has been that you know, I say, they put the diamond in the mine, and it you have to put it through the fire before it becomes a diamond. I am in the fire right now, and I'm okay with that.
And you're
Mm,
deciding to be the alchemist of your own present destiny and also, again, create that impact. One of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you is because a lot of people, especially as we usher into 2022, they want to make that investment in themselves. They want to make
mhm,
that investment in, their purpose and the work. But there's so many different subsectors of investment. And I want to walk through with you through some of those things. But
mhm,
for you in particular, if I'm listening to this podcast, CB, and I'm really trying to figure out what is the first step I can do to invest in
mhm,
myself
mhm,
for myself. And I'm fearful, I'm afraid to do that.
mhm.
You left the number one news room
Correct.
in the country.
Yeah, and
Where
they've
do,
been
where
number
do I
one for
start?
you start with the first investment is the belief in your vision, right? If you don't really believe in it, like meaning with conviction, right? Like, then don't even go on that journey, right? Because there are going to be too many nights or too many days when your validity in this space is going to be questioned, right? And so if you can't first believe in yourself, right? And know that I belong in this space, no matter what my credentials say, no matter what my background is, right? I definitely deserve to be in this space, and I am destined to be in this space. If you don't believe in yourself first, then don't do it. That's the first investment, right? And then when you believe in yourself, then you're going to consciously take steps to build that belief and that vision, right? Meaning for me, it's so funny. Something, and I don't share this much. I'm trying to find my little notebook. I'm sorry, I know I'm moving. I know you told me not to move around, but
Yeah, take your time. Take your time.
so I spent a month in the Dominican Republic, right? I spent a month in the Dominican Republic, and it was really because, I needed time to, one, detach and decompress from, just having been in network news and, all the things that you kind of, the post traumatic stress that you kind of got to detox from. And I say that with a smile, but there were things that happened that as you're living your purpose, you don't really realize how they're impacting your spirit or your self esteem or your productivity or your self concept. And so, um, more oftentimes than not, when people come from marginalized communities and then they go into spaces where they're marginalized, you don't even know that you're being marginalized until you have that conversation with a colleague and you're like, wait a minute, how much do you make? Right? Or
Wow.
wait a minute, you didn't have to do all these things before you got this promotion or you got this investment in you. And so for me, I needed to take that time in the DR. But all that to say, in investing in myself, part of that investment in myself is sometimes you have to disconnect to reconnect, right? To reconnect with your purpose, to reconnect with your dream and your vision, because you can get clouded by all the muck and the mire of a past experience. And until you detach yourself from that and have a space where it's just you and the ocean and the clouds and your God, whatever it is that you subscribe to, until you can have that moment to disconnect, then you can't fully invest in yourself. So the first step is believe in yourself, then take a moment to disconnect so that you can reconnect. And then once you reconnect, you can do some other things that I'm sure we're going to get into in the rest of the conversation.
And and CB, that's incredible. And for our listeners, I call her CB. So if you hear me going back to her nickname, that's just our traditional daily banter. So Crystal, so many people say they can't afford to disconnect. I'm
Mm.
busy being a mom, a partner, busy, trying to get that promotion. But what I hear you saying is actually, if you don't disconnect, the investment that you'll need to make later on is going to be much more significant.
Absolutely, because you're putting yourself in a deficit, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, physically. And so yes, you can afford to, because it's like any other thing that if you want to get a return, then you have to invest. And so, I have spoken to so many people, and not just women, because a lot of times we leave our brothers out, men as well, who are mentally and physically depleted. Like their minds are warped. They don't know the daytime from the nighttime. They don't know how to get out of these, strenuous financial situations. And it's not until they take the time, the investment of time in themselves, to actually get a new lens on this thing, because it's like when you're in it, it's difficult for you to see it. It's like the reason why we go to
Yeah.
therapy, right? It's someone who is outside of the equation that can see it with a clear lens to give you a realistic interpretation of what's happening in your life. And sometimes it's not as bad as we believe it is, but for those who think that they cannot, and I say think because it's just your mindset supersedes the skill set, right? If you believe that you can actually take time to, and taking time away doesn't have to be, going to the Dominican Republic for a month, it's like you and I talk, hey, I'm jumping on the train, I'm going to Philly to a retreat for the weekend. That's something that doesn't cost you a whole lot of money, even if it's just a long car ride where at the end of a crazy
Hmm.
day at work, instead of you just going right home, right, pay the babysitter for an extra hour if you can, and drive, to a quiet, peaceful place, or go sit in the sauna at the gym, or take a swim. Do something for yourself to disconnect so you can reconnect, because if you don't, you will be disjointed, for the remainder of your days as you try to get to your purpose and your plan A, for sure.
And one thing that I really love about you that you shared with me that I had no idea, even when you were in the DR, you got a chance to reconnect with swimming. And you were sharing literally what being in the ocean and swimming those laps, what it did for your mental psyche and
Mm.
connecting you even deeper to
Mm.
your vision that you have for yourself. I was blown away by that.
Yes, thank you, Klay. I learned to swim when I was 4. My favorite Aunt Paulette, God rest her soul, my mom's sister, she's like my idol. Like she had Chanel and Louis Vuitton. She gave my first Louis Vuitton, my first fur coat.
Mm.
I love fur. I'm sorry, y'all, but I love fur. And all these things. And so she was like the woman of, like, she was like my Diane Carroll, right? And
Ah.
yeah, and so her husband used to work for IBM and they had a pool. So we thought they were rich. So we would go up in the summertime to her house, and she taught me to swim when I was very, very little. And one, just even reconnecting with swimming helped me reconnect with someone who was a critical piece of my journey, right? A critical component of who I am as a woman. And so that's the first thing. And actually taking time to disconnect so you can reconnect. Do something that you used to do just freely that doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you anything to swim in the ocean. It doesn't cost you anything to go swim in the lake. It doesn't cost you, may cost you a little bit to go to the gym and swim, but hey, you could find a YMCA, right? And do it for cheap, but you get where I'm going with this analogy, right?
Right.
Like that opportunity to swim again helped me reconnect with my fond memories of someone who has been gone for a few years
Mm.
now. And even that brought me joy. But the other piece of it was, being in the water. Like there's certain elements that can help people get to where they need to be, right? To make you
Mhm.
remember that you're still alive. I think that's a big piece of it. A lot of us
Woo!
are, like we are going through this life on a day to day, Clay, and we do not realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm alive. It's more to work than getting a
Yes.
bag, it's being able to see the trees change colors in the fall, right? So that could be
Yeah.
you taking that drive through a beautiful green and orange and red space as the leaves change. It could be you taking that drive and sitting in the park and seeing the squirrels run around, whatever that thing is.
Right.
But it's critical because we get so caught up in our day-to-day tasks or things to do list that we are not living. We are not alive. We are just like, we have become our cell phones, right? These
Right.
outputs of data, and response,
Yeah.
right? And access to information, but we're not really living our day-to-day experiences. And so I would encourage anybody to do that as well.
Yeah. All right, folks, you're getting a masterclass. If you are just now tuning in, I am talking to the Crystal I. Berger. And Crystal, one of the things that you shared, especially about the investment in yourself and making sure that you're nourished, there's also a part B to that, and that's investing in others.
Mm.
How has investment of other people supported you through your journey? And then how is that also an intentional practice you have for investing in other people? Because I know you are one of the people who do that very, very, very well and so authentic.
Mm. It's crazy. I'll take part of that, investing in
Hmm.
others, right? Um, I think it's something that you have to just do organically, like do
Right.
what your spirit says to do. Stop
Hmm.
overthinking it. Stop rationalizing it. Is this person going to do something for me later? you know, what are they going to think if I help this person? Like, come on, cut that out, and I share that because I grew up in the rec centers when I was young. My mom
Mm.
worked 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day. So my brother and I spent a lot of time in local rec centers. And there were men and women that invested in us every single day. They taught
Mm.
us so much, and they just did it because, they weren't just doing a job. Like they believed in us. They wanted us to grow and evolve to be great humans, right? And so for
Mm.
me, I think that that's something that's just innately in me, right? Because I was
Mhm.
raised by people who, were doers of, a good work in other people, right? So that's the first thing. For some reason, sharing that story made me think about bulletin boards. So one thing I used to love doing, in the rec center was doing the bulletin boards. Like every season, the bulletin boards would change. So, we would do Christmas boards and stuff.
Yeah.
And I used to, I love sparkles and stuff. So I used to love making like the snowflakes with the glitter and all that. But I'm thinking about, Miss Page and Miss Donna or Mr. Leroy who taught me how to cut out my snowflakes, and they were
Wow.
nurturing a spirit of creativity within me, right? Just by
Hmm.
giving, and I share that to
Right.
say, you don't know what the outcome of your giving is going to be. Just give,
Mhm.
invest in others because those blessings do come back full circle, meaning, you could be helping someone make snowflakes as a child, not understanding that down the line you're helping them be a visionary for a multi-billion-dollar tech company in the design space, because a lot of
Yeah.
those cut your line like this and make sure you don't have the glue outside the lines, and that kind of thing are things that I take into all of the decks that you and I put together, right? And all of these things. And so just know that, your investment may not the return on your investment may not look like what you believe it should, but still do the work anyway. So that's the first step, is just do the work and don't
Hmm.
overthink it. That's how we
Yeah.
can be of service and investing in others in that way. But for me, on the idea of people then investing in me at this stage in my journey, right? Because there gets to the
Yeah.
point in your life where you're no longer, this intern or this person that people want to help. And that's a
Hmm.
big piece of growth and development that we need to explore more, because, I don't believe that we have enough people telling us in our 20s, listen, this is the time to soak up as much as you can from people who want to invest in young people, because there is a
Good
cap,
point.
on that, right? Once you hit that 30, early 30s benchmark, people are kind of like, oh, you grown now, figure it out, and then you have to
Hmm.
really get creative about how you connect with people that then want to invest in you. And then also the return on the investment, or the risk that's attached to it for people who are investing in you, does tend to be interpreted as being higher because you are older, right? You are a different set of a risk. So hope I didn't go on too much of a tangent with that, but I wanted to share that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important to understand the difference in the investment you want to make in other people, and being conscious of how that's supportive to folks down the line. You never know where that's going to take place, and also being open to receive that investment as
Mm,
well. And I want to even talk about that a little bit further. Throughout even my journey being an entrepreneur and now in the founder media tech space, I've been
mm-hmm,
seeing that there are a lot of folks that you speak and talk to about their experience receiving,
mm,
and you're talking to them and you're having different conversations, and you realize they're not open to receive. They're
mm,
not open to receive because there's been this workers, attitude. I have to do everything on my own, by myself, for myself. But there
mm-hmm,
also are people who are willing and want to invest in us. So, Crystal, being somebody to me, in my opinion, who is open to receive. For our listeners who are like, all right, Klay, Crystal, I want to hear what you have to say, but there's a block where I can't
mm,
receive what people
mm,
are willing or trying to invest in me. How do
mm-hmm.
they open that space?
I'm about to go CB West Baltimore on you.
Do it. Do it.
Get your ish together. Because listen, Clay, I'm just saying. And I'm going to share this because most of the time we can't receive because it's something inside of us that we either feel we are unworthy of, that we fear we cannot handle, right? Or
Hmm.
we're not qualified to actually receive the investment and deliver a return, right? So most of
Hmm.
the time, it's like us resisting the beauty of an amazing relationship. You and I have talked about this often, right? There's one person in the world that I feel like I definitely like. I didn't feel like I was worthy of this person's love, And so instead
Mm.
of me receiving the goodness of everything that I had prayed for or thought that I wanted in this world, I pushed it away because I was like, oh no, he can't possibly, want to go on that journey with me and that kind of thing. And so I share that to say, get your ish together because that's an internal thing, right? So in order for you to be, my dad always says, you can't catch the ball when your hands are full, right? And so when you got all of this stuff, you got all this stuff in your hands, and you trying to catch a blessing and you trying to do the work, but you fumbling, right? You're fumbling because your hands are full. So get that stuff out of your hands, deal with your issues, and going back to the Dominican Republic, dealing with your stuff. I'm gonna tell you something. It took me decades. I'm not gonna say how many, but being in the DR, right? My cousin was there, who was like one of my BFFs. He is a tax accountant, a tax attorney, and he's really good with money. And I
Mm.
know part of the thing that I wanted to deal with, I've always been able to access money, right? It goes back to this, but not been able to keep it in my hands. And I was like, I
Mm.
really want to deal with this because I know that in order for me to receive the venture capital that is coming my way from my company, my guy needs to know that I'm prepared, that I can
Woo.
handle it. And I need to feel comfortable to handle it. So we did a session and I had a whole crime breakthrough moment. I had a CB Inspires Plan A moment, all of that, right? But the first thing my cousin said to me, as I was sharing with him, my concerns, he's like, well, it's not that you don't have access to capital. It's not that you don't know people who would be interested in investing in you. He was like, what's your financial philosophy? And I said, what? I did my life mission statement. And I did business plans and all that. But he said, what's your financial philosophy? And it really took the breath out of my body, because I did not know. And I'm a woman of many words. So for me to
That's
not
right.
know what that was, I was like, whoa, and so knowing that that's the starting point of being able to receive is actually knowing what is your philosophy around these things. It's not just receiving, it could be your philosophy around giving. Why aren't you giving, right? What is your giving philosophy, right? Why aren't you, why aren't you scaling? What is your philosophy around that? And so what we realized was that I had a pattern of impulsiveness, right, that was attached to my financial philosophy, but also a transactional relationship with money, right? I used to do hair when I was 12, right? And so that's how I started doing hair at 12 throughout high school. And so I always had money coming in, right? Always had money, cash money, And so if I wanted something, I just do more hair, And so like that could have been like a little Fendi purse or whatever. I just do more hair, And so what my cousin said was I had created a pattern of transactions in my money that weren't scalable over time, because it was in and out, in and out, in and
Mm.
out. And so that was my financial philosophy. So knowing that needed to be reshaped and reframed before I could receive was critical. But the other piece was, Klay, my whole life I've been having money, never knew how to budget,
Mm-hmm.
like real time budget. And I know people say this a lot, and I want to share this with the audience because I know there's going to be someone out here who's listening who is living their life. You might have a nice car, a nice home, a great
Yeah.
job, but you are not living, meaning you're going check to check. You want investment in your business or your brand or even in your educational future, but you can't hold on to a dollar. And what I realized is that there's like this little prong. I have it on my notebook. That's what I was digging for. You probably can't see it, but it talks about how when you budget, your guidelines are, the 100% is the receiving account, right? And then 30% of your money, right? Because this is what we're talking about. We see all of our celebrities and idols going to jail for tax fraud and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Tax
30% of
evasion.
all of that, right?
Mhm.
30% of your money is supposed to, like, off the top, go to taxes. Put that money
Mhm.
in a tax account. Put it in an envelope under your mattress. I don't care, right?
Mhm.
10% is your wealth account. That's your savings or your investments or whatever you want to do. Then another 10% is your charity account. The 20% is like your general account. Like that's the account that you live off of. You're only supposed to be able to live off of 20% of the money that you bring in, right? So that
Mhm.
then gives you another lens, like, of maybe I am in the wrong job, because if I got to live off of $55,000 a year, right? And you're not living off the 55, you're living off of 20% of the 55, right?
Right.
And then the other 30% goes to operations, if you're running a business. And so I needed to have that revelation in the DR for me to be able
Yeah.
to, guess what happened when I got back though? The venture
What happened,
capital
CB?
fund. The venture capital fund. When I had the clarity, the venture capital fund, they sent me an offer like, hey, we believe in you. We believe in you as a founder. We believe that you're going to be a good steward of the resources that we can
Hmm.
provide to you. And it was not until, and I've been on this journey for a year, pitching, 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 pitching. It
Right.
wasn't until I had my little green money notebook and broke it down that I could see how to be a good steward of the resources so I could now receive them. So that's the main piece of advice I want to give. Get your ish together. Whatever that is. If you need to learn how to budget,
Yeah.
if you need to figure out what your philosophy is behind these things, if you just need to get organized, or if you need to really do some reevaluating, just get your stuff together, because you can't receive anything when your hands are full.
Yeah, I love that because so many times we have these spiritual conversations about money being able
Mm,
to receive. And sometimes it really comes down to the practicality of one plus one is two.
mm,
Is that something that's in your budget line? And so I really appreciate you sharing that. And the third part of just in the investment in general that I really want to have a conversation with is the investments or lack thereof that's happening in Black and Brown communities.
mm,
Crystal, share with our audience, because you brought this to my attention, the Inc.com article
mm.
about 147 billion. Y- Go ahead, share that whole story with our audience, because I think I just had a meeting yesterday,
Mm.
and as I was sharing with a CEO of a corporation these numbers, he said he had never, ever, ever heard of these things before. So break that down for our audience.
So it's a lot in that what you just said, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of times I believe people don't see what they don't want to see. And I'm not talking about this particular person, but there are a lot of people
right.
who want to be, oblivious to the realities of systemic structures that are in place to keep a certain population of people oppressed, right? So that's
Mm.
one part of that. But I won't go there, right? But the article basically was saying 2021 was a historic year for tech companies and startups getting funding. Over
Mm.
$147 billion was raised by startups for the first 2 quarters of 2021. Okay, not even the whole
Historic,
year.
historic.
Historic. And so I don't even know where we are now. I know I'll get the data soon, right? At the end of the year. But without of that $147 billion, only
Mhm.
1.2% of those dollars went to Black founders, okay? In
Say,
totality. That
say that one more time. 'Cause I don't think the folks heard you.
Listen, only 1.2% went to Black founders in totality. Okay. And so now, and when I look at Black, I'm sure that African is included in that. So that's the continent of Africa, right? I'm sure that Black Americans are included in that equation, and also Latinos of African descent, right? So
Mhm.
out of all of that damn money, okay,
Let's be
only
real. Yeah.
1.2% went to Black founders. And then out of that 1.2%, I don't know the exact number, but I think it was only 0.8%, 0.08% went to Black female founders, right? And so you guys can Google the article. I give the disclosure that if the number was a little off, it, excuse me, right? But it's
Mhm.
somewhere in that range. And so when you think about that, right, when these types of numbers, one, are public, right? So this is why I go back to executives and corporations that act as if they don't know, right? All of this data is public knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It again goes back to what we talked about earlier: what you care about, what you want to give to, right? What things you are committed to doing work in what spaces, right? Will determine if you know or if you don't know. Okay.
Hmm.
And I am a firm believer of, and I say this all the time and I'll say it here, I don't want money from Black funds.
Really?
We are systemically oppressed. We need to mobilize and deploy our resources in other ways. There are people in this country and our society that owe us, a return, on our investment into the American
Oh.
culture and society. And I absolutely believe that we should be looking to people who have acquired mass wealth off of our talents, our resources, and our innovation. And I don't believe that Black funds have they're still raising themselves, right? They're
Mm.
still trying to find capital themselves to deploy within brown and Black communities. I believe that those types of resources could be going, meaning funds from Black funds could be going to things like community development, community reinvestment, in different ways than going to tech startups, in my opinion.
So this literally supports your
Mhm.
strategy and who you seek VC dollars from and who you don't see
Absolutely.
VC dollars from. Got
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Because so this is the thing. So I have been blessed to align with some amazing non-Black people who are
Mhm.
committed to doing the work of leveling the playing field. This is their mission. This is what they're committed to. They are invested in me, and they also have resources because they have had access for generations that I just don't have, right? And so the other piece of
Right.
saying I don't necessarily want dollars from a Black venture fund is saying our resources are so limited because we have been left out of the equation for so long that we are
Yeah.
still building those resources. And if I'm going into the pot and I'm extracting those resources as you're building, it's going to be harder
Mm,
for those funds to get where they need to go. Whereas if I'm with an established venture capital fund, they come from generations and generations of wealth and access. Me taking and not, no, excuse me, let me reframe that, me adding value to their fund, right? And helping them scale their portfolio is not going to leave them in a deficit because they have a
mm.
surplus of resources.
Got it. They have a surplus of resources. And so just for
Surplus.
just for our audience, I think it's really important for you to share this. As we're talking about, the different deficits that's happening in brown and black communities around founders and that kind of thing, you speak about access. And when people hear access, they just think it's financial access. Explain to our viewers what you mean by access in different forms as you see it in your world.
To me, financial access is the last thing on, right? It's about your ability to be in rooms that can accelerate, right? We hear these terms,
Hmm.
the accelerators that can accelerate your progress, right?
Yeah.
Where you can be in a room and have a conversation with someone who's going to shift how you perceive your financial projections, right? You and I have talked about this extensively. Someone
Yep.
who can look at an email and say, this is not how you word this, because they've been playing the game. They learned the game from their great grandfathers, right? And so now they're
Right.
teaching you the game, right? But if you have never had access to those spaces, you're figuring it out and you're hitting more bumps in the road more frequently and you're starting over consistently, right? And so
Hmm.
access is being in a room with people who can shift your life and accelerate your progress, right? And we need to understand that acceleration is not that you're skipping steps. It is that you are actually being mobilized in the spaces where you've already done the work, right?
That's
We're not
right.
saying we want to skip any steps or we want shortcuts. We've already done the work, but because of the lack of access, we have been marginalized in these spaces, right?
Yeah.
Again, going back to me in the newsroom, I was the only, look, I used to say to my colleagues, do y'all think I'm the only Black girl in the nation that's qualified to be in this newsroom with y'all? And I'm probably one of the lesser qualified ones, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, do y'all think I'm the only Black girl that deserve to be in this room, Klay? And they
Hmm.
would laugh. They're like, Crystal, you crazy? I'm like, no, but I'm think about that. And so you think about those kinds of situations and you think about what I was able to create by being in that room. If I hadn't been in that room, one, I wouldn't have been able to meet people like you,
Right.
you know, and us to be able to collaborate and nurture one another's businesses, but then also to be able to connect with our white, yellow, red, and brown counterparts, right? So we can cohesively come together and affect change. And so those are the things we talk about access, the money as they say, you do what you love, the money will come, right? The
Right.
money will come. But if you don't have access to do what you love, right? You're working 3 or 4 jobs, check to check, you can't fly to the meeting, that because you don't have the money to pay for your plane ticket or your hotel stay. All of those things
Yeah.
impact if we can create some level of generational wealth, level the playing field, but also break these barriers to these systemic issues that exist in our culture, right? Because the thing is that I know because I was in those rooms, I made not just the lives of Black and brown people who I was bringing into the room better, I made the lives of my colleagues better who never had a Black
Right.
friend, never had a Black
Yeah.
colleague, never had a conversation or a relationship with a Black woman, period. And so
Right.
those are the kinds of things that we have to really own and know that the access is critical for us to be able to shift how our society not only perceives people, but also to really do the good work that we're called and designed to do in this world. Look, you got me going.
Yeah. No, no, you preaching to the choir because I think about Lovey. She
Mm,
says this every single solitary time that she speaks. She goes, "White men, white founders in particular, need to stop just talking about this optimism piece and you just being optimistic when they have been able to benefit from picking up the phone, walking into a publisher's meeting
mm,
with a sticky note with the idea, getting the
yeah.
book deal." Going to a institute where you're invited in New York City, down in Chelsea, where donors are coming to hear you speak in a private home. And here is the check. And so
Absolutely.
she says all the time that we're not looking for anything given to us, but the cheat codes, as she puts it.
Mm,
And there are those access things of, okay, here's a phone call that I can put in for you. Here
mhm,
is something that can simply shift and change, my life like it did for her. And she always says she's so grateful that some, white colleagues sat her down and said, here is what I can do to support you. And here's
mm.
how it also can elevate your life.
Absolutely. It's like, let me get in the game, coach.
Yeah.
It's like, let me get in the
Yeah.
game, coach. And it's so crazy because I always like to um look at it like we had me, and this is black folk I'm speaking to here. So whoever's listening is not black, you can still listen because you're gonna get a gem as well, right? But we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable in certain spaces. Like we
Yeah.
are we are cool being uncomfortable in the spaces that we used to being uncomfortable, right?
Right.
Whether that's a socioeconomically disadvantaged community or whatever. Like we cool with that, right? But no, I'm
Yeah.
talking about be comfortable being the only one in the room, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that you deserve to be in the room because that's the only way you're going to be able to shift and do those things and to create these allies. Like I never forget, I was very offended. um Probably this was probably 3 or 4 years now ago when I was talking to two of my good girlfriends. Was the VP of a major cable network, and another one, both black women, another one was a VP at a tech company. And they said, you need the pull up. Like you need a white girl advocating for you when you're not in the room. And I was like, no, I don't. And I'm going, and I'm like, I don't need a blonde to help me do this. Da, da. And I was in my emotions, right? Because the statement
Mm.
made me uncomfortable. So I wouldn't go into the conversation to get what I needed because I was still stuck in my emotions, and resisting the information. And in that moment, I thought about it. I said, oh my God, I've been in this position in my job for over 5 years. Just little small pay increases, no title change,
Mm.
no one teaching me how to navigate the room like you were just talking about and Lovey speaks about, right? The cheat code. Like, and it kept me at a very marginalized space, right? To where
Mm.
once I reflected on what they were saying, look, they were in leadership roles at Fortune 500 companies, right?
Right.
But they had white men and white women that were pulling them into meetings, pulling them into conversations, acknowledging their work, right, in front of the decision makers. And so, if you don't have that allyship within an organization, you need to start building that community. You need to be actively engaging with people who do not look like you, who do not come from a common experience that you come from. And you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable because they have access to the spaces where you deserve to be. But if you don't have the person, like you're saying, picking up the phone and saying, hey, Klay needs to be at this meeting, Klay needs to be a part of this Forbes article, Klay needs to, whatever that thing is, you will not get the opportunity. And typically those opportunities are not possessed by us because we have been left out of those spaces and places.
Yeah, and I love that,
Mm,
Crystal. And one thing I want to leave with people in particular is really understanding beyond getting into these different rooms, knowing within yourself there are no rules. People
mm,
think that you have to, it got to be like this. You got to talk to that particular person, and if you don't, the steps. A lot of times, the people who are really making it happen in new, innovative ways, they don't have the conscious or the unconscious bondage that comes in with saying these are the rules that I have to live
mm,
by. When a decision maker, you can just go right to that person instead of it, well, let me,
Mm.
you know what I mean? And so that's something that I think, go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, and I have to rep, Baltimore Dunbar poets, Reginald F. Lewis, the first Black male billionaire.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And I was honored to meet his wife this summer,
Yeah.
because the book is about, man, these rules are meant to be broken in business, right? That's how you have innovation. Steve Jobs, one of my favorite quotes is, innovation is the thing that distinguishes the leaders from the followers. If he took in every no that came his way when he decided to create Apple, like, why do you want to name it Apple? It shouldn't be Apple. And what is, all of these things, we would not have this huge piece of our culture and our society, right? And so rules are meant to be broken, but more importantly, it is that stepping outside of yourself and that voice that lives in the back of your mind that tells you
Mm.
can't, or that tells you that you're not enough, or tells that you need more or better qualifications. What I learned once I got in those rooms, Klay, and I say this to you all the time in private, the majority of those people in those rooms are just average. And because most brown and Black people have been raised under the premise that my aunties used to say it all the time, girl, your ice better be colder, and so
Chilled.
chilled, honey, and a whole
Yeah.
nother, you better chill on another side of the freezer. When you
Yeah.
have that level of preparation, there is nothing that you can't tackle once you get in those rooms. And if I could leave people with anything, on this Plan A conversation, is always pursue your Plan A with conviction and with entitlement.
Hmm. Listen, 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 with conviction and entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, CB, we have gone to the valley of the investment in yourself, looking at the investment in others. We went to the actual VC dollars of it all, and all of these different spheres of what investment actually means for our progression in life.
Mm,
What is 2022 looking like for you? What are you feeling, God
mm.
saying to you? And what words do you want to impart on our audience as we wrap up?
Chad, I'm always digging for a notepad.
You got a
Listen, I got it.
resource. You got
I got it written down on my list, and I got it written down. I'm gonna tell you, one day I'm gonna step into I'm gonna step into like digital notes, but I'm a journalist.
got your
Okay,
resource.
got my resource. Okay, okay.
What you got, CV?
Listen, activate, 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 activate. I went to
Mm,
church last Sunday, and it was about listening, right? And it was just talking about when you hear from God, how do you know that you're actually, how does he know that you're listening? And
yeah.
listening is not just hearing, it's hearing and doing, right? It's hearing
Mm-hmm.
and doing, because that means that you're operating in full obedience to actually do the work, right? That means that you're activating. And so I spoke with Latinas in Business last week. I was a part of their annual fundraiser, and God gave me this word, activate, and he gave me an acronym, and I just want to share with the audience. I used to
Yeah.
be a
Go ahead.
ninth grade English teacher, so I always got me an acronym. So activate: align, collaborate, teach, innovate, validate, appraise, trailblaze, and excel. Align, right? Get in alignment, get your people, get your tribe, right? Collaborate. Now, once you get your tribe, don't just have them and y'all going to lunch, right? Collaborate. You know what I'm saying? Like, figure out how
Yeah.
you guys can be better, share resources, right? Then teach, take whatever it is that within that community and teach it to someone else, and then create some innovative ways of applying this, right? And then
Yeah.
once you create those innovative pathways of what you guys have collaborated and aligned on, then you want to validate it, because numbers matter, right? Numbers matter. They're critical in what we do. Your numbers don't lie. Just like the data that we talked about on, Black and brown founders. So the numbers don't lie. So validate with numbers, and then appraise. Take some time to survey your progress, create benchmarks on your journey. And then once you do that, then you can trailblaze. Then you can set the path forward for others, right? But more importantly, the only way that we can get to any of this, right, and do any of this is that we create a spirit and a commitment to excelling in excellence, right? And so that is the word, is activate. I am activating in 2022. I'm looking to align with people to activate, because at the end of the day, we can have all the genius, all the goodness, all the flavor, all the swag, all of that. But if we are not activating, right, then we'll be in the same place that we were 10 years ago.
So listen, what I love about all the guests, you all give me the title for the podcast. And this is one is going to be called How to Activate Your Investment in 22.
Yes, I love it.
CB Inspire. So Crystal, listen, as we wrap up, where can we learn about you, learn about your tech and how to support you?
Absolutely. I am really excited in my activation, my commitment to activating me and my voice play. They can go to cbinspires.com. You can go to the projects tab. I really am looking to speak and influence more in that way. So 2022, if you want to get at me, you can see Klay on my projects tab and see us in action at Business Insider.
Yeah.
But guys, go to cbinspires.com. If you want any information about me and what I'm doing, you can find it there.
Listen, folks, so you have had the masterclass. If you've been trying to figure out how to not only make peace with your 21, but to jumpstart and activate your investment in yourself in 22, you heard it right here with Crystal Berger. I want to thank you so much for your time. And so listen, folks, I have all of Crystal's information at the base of this podcast. Of course, you can learn more about me by visiting clayswilliams.com. And I'm on all of your favorite social media by the handle of @Plan A with Klay. That's @Plan A with Klay, folks. Remember that Klay's with a K. Thanks for listening. Look forward to seeing you in our very next episode of Plan A Conversations. Happy holidays, folks. Peace.